So if you sit down at a fantastic restaurant, right, and you eat this incredible meal prepared by a master chef, and then you just tell that chef the food was good, you might actually insult them.
Oh, absolutely. You definitely might.
Yeah, and the reason why is that good is just, well, it's one of the weakest, emptiest words in the English language.
It really is. It's like handing someone an empty box.
Exactly, an empty box. Because when we talk about food, we're really talking about culture and memory and personal identity.
Right. But if you're an adult who is, just beginning to learn English, you might feel totally trapped.
Oh, for sure. You have these complex, beautiful, mature thoughts in your head, but you feel limited to empty words like good or bad.
And that's incredibly frustrating. You already know how the world works. You know what a complex meal tastes like.
Yeah, your challenge isn't learning about life. Your challenge is simply learning the new labels for the life you already know.
Exactly. And that is our mission in this deep dive today. We're going to break you out of that trap.
We really are. We've gathered some amazing materials and guides specifically designed for beginners, but we're not going to treat you like a child.
No, not at all. We're going to give you the precise linguistic tools to express exactly what you experience.
And since we are designing this deep dive for you, the beginner English learner, we're going to speak at a steady, comfortable pace today.
Right. We'll use clear, simple vocabulary so you can just relax and absorb every single idea.
So welcome to our deep dive into the true international language, which is, of course, food.
It is such a privilege to explore this with you today.
So let's just jump right into the foundation of sharing yourself. Because if you go to a party or maybe a first date or a business lunch,
you're going to get asked about food.
Oh, almost certainly. You will hear this basic question, what is your favorite food?
Right. And a beginner might feel nervous and just shout out one word like pizza and then stop talking.
Yeah, just freeze up. But the materials we're studying today offer a strict rule for this situation.
And it's a great rule. The rule is never just drop a single word. You must use a bridge to connect that food to your personality.
And that bridge is the word because.
Because is just a fascinating word. Structurally, it's the word that answers the question why.
Right.
But psychologically, it's an invitation. Think about what happens when you just say chocolate.
You've just stated a fact.
Exactly. You've built a wall.
Yeah.
The conversation just stops. The other person has to do all the hard work to keep things going.
Yeah, they have to be like, oh, what kind of chocolate?
Right. But when you say, my favorite food is chocolate because, well, you're opening a door. You're inviting the listener into your mind.
I love that. You're explaining your internal reasoning. It changes it from a basic test into an actual human connection.
It really does.
I really want to look at the two examples provided in our notes because they show how that word because reveals entirely different personalities.
Well, these are great examples. Let's look at the first one.
So the first example is someone talking about pizza. They don't just say they like it. They say, I like pizza because it is versatile.
Versatile. That is such a fantastic word.
It really is. It just means something can adapt. It can be used in many different ways.
Right. And then they explain it further. They say it's thin crust topped with cheese, pepperoni, and mushrooms.
And then they add that it's salty, cheesy, and perfect for sharing.
Notice that social element at the end there. Perfect for sharing.
Yeah, that tells you so much about them.
Exactly. By using the word because, this person painted a complete psychological portrait. We can imagine them.
They're probably really social, energetic. They like being surrounded by a loud group of friends.
They value adaptability and warmth. And all of that rich personal information came from simply explaining why they like a certain food.
Right. And then we contrast that with the second example from the text, which is sushi.
Ah, yes.
The person says, my favorite food is sushi because it feels fresh.
Very different vibe.
Totally. They go on to describe the combination of cold fish and vinegared rice. And vinegared rice just means rice that has been mixed with a sour liquid called vinegar.
Right. And then they say something really poetic. They say sushi is like a little piece of art on a plate. The contrast is striking, isn't it? Pizza is warm, heavy, and a bit chaotic.
Yeah, while sushi is cold, light, and highly structured.
The person who loves sushi for its aesthetic beauty, calling it art on a plate, is telling you that they value quiet observation.
Fine details, visual balance.
Exactly. If they had only said sushi and stopped, you would never know that they have the soul of an artist.
Wow. Yeah, the word because is the vehicle that carries your deeper identity into the English language.
It really is the foundation.
I actually think of it like the architecture of a house. Because is the concrete foundation. You definitely need that solid base.
Right, it holds everything up.
But once you have the foundation, you need the bricks, the wood, the paint. To truly explain why you like something, you need descriptive words, you need adjectives.
And if because is the structure, those sensory adjectives are the decorations that make the house beautiful.
Exactly. And the sensory vocabulary of English is incredibly rich, particularly when it comes to the basic tastes our tongues can actually process.
Biology tells us that humans evolved to recognize specific tastes just for survival, and our language reflects that deep biological history.
So let's begin with the taste that brings the most immediate pleasure: sweet.
Sweet. When you say the word, it almost sounds gentle, doesn't it?
It does. Sweetness is sugar, honey, a rich chocolate cake, or, a bowl of ice cream.
But it's also natural things, too. A ripe strawberry, a juicy peach.
Right. From an evolutionary standpoint, a sweet taste signals to the brain that a food contains safe, immediate energy.
It literally tells the body this will help you survive, and that's why we crave it.
Oh, that makes sense why the word sweet in English has taken on such a positive cultural meaning, too.
Exactly. When someone is kind to you, what do you call them? You call them a sweet person.
Yeah. Sweetness represents safety, reward, and happiness.
It's universally loved. But now let's look at a taste that is totally different, but equally essential. Salty.
Salty. This is the taste of the ocean. Salt, potato chips, popcorn.
I know you love your salty snacks.
I will admit, I am completely addicted. Give me a bag of salty potato chips, and I will not stop until the bag is totally empty.
You and me both. But salt isn't just a snack flavor, right? It's a fundamental ingredient.
It is. Salt actually enhances other flavors. It makes food taste more like itself.
And like sweetness, salt is a biological necessity. Human bodies literally need salt to function, to keep our nerves firing and our muscles moving.
So when you describe a food as salty, you're describing a very grounding, essential, and highly stimulating flavor. A salty meal feels substantial.
Those two, sweet and salty, are what I would call the friendly tastes. But the next taste on our list is more aggressive. It actually fights back a little bit.
Oh, I know this one. Sour.
Sour is a fascinating sensory experience. The examples we have in the guide are a yellow lemon or a vinegar.
The defining characteristic of sour food is not just the flavor, right? It's the physical reaction it causes in your body.
Yes, the guide we're looking at highlights a great English phrase for this physical reaction. It says, sour food makes your mouth pucker up.
Pucker up. Let's break that down for you. To pucker up means the muscles in your lips suddenly pull together really tightly.
Almost making a tiny circle.
Yeah, and your eyes might even squeeze shut for a second. Imagine you take a knife, cut a fresh lemon in half, and bite directly into the yellow fruit.
Oh, I can feel it just thinking about it.
Right, that sharp shock that travels up your jaw, that is your mouth puckering up.
And the reason your mouth puckers is that sourness usually indicates acidity. In nature, high acidity can mean fruit is not ripe yet.
Or it can mean food has fermented or gone bad.
Exactly. A little bit of sourness is wonderful in cooking because it cuts through heavy fats and wakes up the palate, but it is a shock to the system.
Waking up the palate is a great way to describe it. But if sour wakes you up, the next taste sets off a literal fire alarm in your brain.
Oh yeah, spicy.
It's spicy. Chili peppers, strong curries, hot sauce.
What is really incredible about the word spicy is that it does not describe a traditional taste at all. It describes a sensation of pain and heat.
Wait, let's pause there. It describes a sensation of pain. That sounds terrible. Why do people willingly eat things that cause them pain?
Well, because it's a trick we play on our own bodies.
A trick.
Yeah. When you eat a spicy chili pepper, there's a chemical inside the pepper called capsaicin, and it binds to the heat receptors on your tongue.
Okay.
The pepper is not physically hot. It is not actually burning you, but your brain receives a signal that says your mouth is on fire.
Wow. So your body reacts to this fake fire.
Exactly. You might start to sweat. Your nose might run. Your heart beats faster.
That sounds intense.
It is, but eventually your brain releases endorphins, which are chemicals that make you feel happy and relaxed to help you cope with the pain.
That is amazing. So when you tell someone in English, I love spicy food, you're actually telling them that you enjoy a little bit of intense chemical excitement. You like the thrill.
Precisely. You're a thrill seeker at the dinner table. And that brings us to the final basic taste, which is perhaps the most complex and mature of all. Bitter.
Bitter. Our materials give the examples of dark chocolate and strong black coffee.
Bitter is basically the opposite of sweet. It has no sugar, no gentleness. It is a deep, dark, sharp flavor.
Why do we even like it then?
Well, in the wild, a bitter taste often serves as a warning sign. Many toxic plants and poisons in nature taste bitter.
So humans are born with a natural dislike for it.
Exactly. Babies will reject bitter food immediately. To like bitter food, you actually have to train yourself.
You have to learn that the bitterness in coffee or dark chocolate is safe.
Right. And this makes bitter a very sophisticated flavor. It's a taste you earn with age and experience.
So we have the 5 primary tastes: sweet, salty, sour, spicy, and bitter. Those are the invisible flavors.
But eating is a physical act, too.
It is. When food enters your mouth, your tongue and your teeth feel its physical structure. In English, we call this physical feeling texture.
Texture is a beautiful concept. If you close your eyes and touch a cotton shirt, the texture is soft. If you touch the bark of a tree, the texture is rough.
And when applied to food, texture describes the architecture of what you are eating. How does it break apart? How does it resist your teeth?
Let's explore the most energetic texture word we have: crispy, or its closely related cousin, crunchy.
I love those words. What is remarkable about crispy and crunchy is that they aren't just feelings, they are auditory experiences. They describe a sound.
Exactly. The materials note the crunch, crunch sound.
When you bite into a fresh green apple or a piece of fried chicken with a golden crust, the sound actually travels through the bones in your jaw directly to your ear. It's loud.
And psychologically, the sound of a crunch is deeply satisfying to humans. It implies freshness. A crunchy apple is a fresh apple.
Right, a silent, soft apple is old and probably rotten.
Food companies actually spend millions of dollars engineering the perfect auditory crunch for their potato chips.
Wait, really? Millions of dollars?
Oh yeah, because that sound releases stress in the human brain. The louder the crunch, the more we want to eat it.
That explains so much about my potato chip habit.
Right. Now, on the completely opposite side of the spectrum, we have the texture word soft.
Soft is yielding. It offers no resistance at all.
Think of a piece of fresh white bread or a marshmallow. When you bite into something soft, your teeth pass right through it silently. It feels comforting and gentle.
And then there is a texture that sits in its own special category because it involves liquid, juicy.
Juicy means the food has a high water content trapped inside its structure.
Think of a heavy slice of watermelon on a hot summer day. When you bite into it, the structure collapses and all that cold, sweet water rushes into your mouth.
It might even drip down your hands.
Or a fresh orange. We use the word juicy to describe foods that refresh us and quench our thirst.
Now, if you want to sound incredibly natural and fluent in English, the secret is not just knowing these words, but combining them.
Our guide provides an excellent exercise for this. If you take one word for taste and one word for texture, you create a 3-dimensional image in the listener's mind.
Let's demonstrate this for you right now. Think about French fries.
Okay, if you just say, I like French fries, it's boring.
But if you combine the words, you say, I like French fries because they're salty and crispy.
Suddenly, the person listening can practically taste the salt and hear the crunch in their own head.
Let's try another one. A green apple. How would you describe it?
A green apple is sour and crunchy. You get the sharp shock on the tongue and the loud snap against the teeth.
Perfect. What about a thick, square chocolate brownie fresh from the oven?
Oh, that's easy. It is sweet and soft, the comforting safety of sugar combined with the gentle, melting feeling in your mouth.
I highly encourage you, the listener, to practice this mental exercise throughout your day.
Yes, when you sit down to eat your next meal, do not just eat it. Analyze it in English.
Look at your rice and think this is soft. Look at your salad and think this is crunchy and bitter.
This active translation in your mind will cement the vocabulary permanently.
It's wonderful advice. But here's where our conversation needs to shift gears a little bit.
Right, because we have talked about the physical tongue, the teeth, and the biology of flavor. But the foods we love the most rarely have to do with just the physical sensation.
They're connected to something much more powerful. They trigger deep emotional memories.
And this brings us to a really beautiful English concept, comfort food.
Comfort food. It is a profoundly human concept. The word comfort means a state of physical ease and freedom from pain or constraint.
It's the feeling of safety. When you're shivering from the cold, a heavy wool blanket gives you comfort. When you're grieving, the embrace of a friend gives you comfort.
So comfort food isn't about nutrition. It's not about fancy ingredients or master chefs.
No, it's food that functions like that heavy wool blanket. It makes you feel safe, loved, and protected from the harshness of the world.
Our guide shares 2 personal stories that perfectly illustrate how this works, and both of them focus heavily on childhood.
Because childhood is when we are most vulnerable, but also when we are most cared for by others.
Exactly. The first story is from a woman who says her comfort food is chicken soup, but she's very specific about when she wants it.
She doesn't crave it on a normal Tuesday. She craves it when she is feeling sad or when she's sick with a cold.
And the reason why is just magical. She doesn't want the soup because she logically needs the hot liquid.
She wants it because the taste and the warmth instantly transport her back in time. It triggers the memory of her mother sitting by her bed, taking care of her when she was a helpless child.
The soup is not just food. It is a symbol of a mother's unconditional love.
The second story is equally powerful. It's about a man whose comfort food is a grilled cheese sandwich.
And for those who might not know, this is simple white bread with cheese in the middle, cooked in a hot pan with butter until the outside is crispy and the cheese inside is melted and stretching.
He states that the smell of the melting cheese instantly relaxes him. Why? Because it brings back vivid memories of his father cooking those sandwiches for him on dark, rainy afternoons.
But I want to push back on this a little bit, or at least examine it closer.
Okay, go ahead.
Is it actually the food doing the comforting? If that man ate a grilled cheese sandwich that his father made, but he ate it in a stressful office while his boss was yelling at him, would it still be comfort food?
Oh, that's a great point.
Isn't it just the memory of the rainy day and the safety of the house that provides the comfort?
That is a brilliant distinction, and you are entirely correct. The food itself is just a mechanism, a key, that unlocks a specific door in the brain.
And science backs this up beautifully. The part of your brain that processes smell, called the olfactory bulb, is physically located right next to the hippocampus.
Which is the part of your brain that stores memories.
Yes, they're intimately connected. That's why the man doesn't even need to eat the sandwich. Just the smell of melting cheese bypasses his logical brain and instantly activates the emotional memory of his father's protection.
The food is a time machine.
The food is a time machine. I love that.
And because food acts as a time machine, we have a specific English phrase you need to learn so you can share these stories. The phrase is, "It reminds me of."
Remind means to cause someone to remember someone or something. So you can say, eating spicy noodles reminds me of my grandmother's kitchen.
Or, the smell of black coffee reminds me of my first week at university.
This phrase is a massive leap forward for an English beginner.
It really is. When you use the phrase, "it reminds me of," you are no longer just a language student practicing a list of nouns and verbs. You become a storyteller.
You invite the listener into your past. You are saying, I am a complex person with a history, and I want to share a piece of my history with you.
It's an act of vulnerability.
It truly is. But of course, we cannot always be vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. Sharing deep emotional memories requires a safe environment and people we trust.
That's very true. We also have to interact with the world in very casual, public spaces where we don't know the people well.
And in those situations, we still need to express our desires and our dislikes, but we must do so using the social rules of politeness.
This is a critical pivot in our deep dive. Let's talk about the sociology of politeness in English.
When you are at a dinner party or a business dinner, you need tools to express what you want and tools to politely reject what you do not want.
Let's start with the positive. If you really like something, just saying, "I like it," feels a bit cold. How can we express genuine enthusiasm?
Enthusiasm is wonderful because it generates positive energy in the room. Our guide gives us a fantastic, very natural English phrase. I'm a big fan of.
I'm a big fan of.
Exactly. For example, I'm a big fan of spicy food.
Now, a beginner might be confused by that. Usually the word fan is used for sports or entertainment. You are a fan of Manchester United or you are a fan of a famous pop singer.
Right.
How does a person become a fan of a vegetable or a type of meat?
It's a metaphorical extension of the word.
Yeah.
When you're a fan of a sports team, it means you support them, you root for them, and they bring you joy.
So by applying this to food, English speakers playfully suggest that they support this food just as strongly as they would support a team.
Yes, it is a very friendly, highly native-sounding phrase.
Another great phrase for showing strong positive emotion is, "I'm crazy about..." Let's look at this carefully. Crazy usually has a negative meaning.
It means someone has lost their mind or they're acting wild and unpredictable.
Yes, but in the context of I'm crazy about chocolate, it means your love for chocolate is so intense that it makes you abandon logic.
You love it wildly. It's an exaggeration used for dramatic, happy effect.
And then there is a word that describes a physical need, crave. The materials provide the sentence. I crave a cold drink right now.
Crave is much stronger than want. If you want a glass of water, it's a casual thought in your mind.
But if you crave a glass of water, it means your body is sending you urgent signals. Perhaps you have been walking in the hot sun for 2 hours.
Your cells are depleted. The desire is deep and physical. You can also crave comfort food.
If you're very stressed, you might say, I am really craving a hot bowl of soup. Your body is asking for the safety that soup provides.
Those are excellent ways to show you are happy. But human interaction is not always about what we want.
Unfortunately, no. Often, someone offers us something we strongly dislike. And here, the English language contains some dangerous traps for beginners.
Let's set a scene. Let's say someone spends 2 hours cooking a fish dish. They proudly put the plate in front of you, and you take a bite. You hate fish.
Oh, no.
Why is it incredibly dangerous to say, I hate this?
Well, hate is an aggressive, violent word. It expresses deep hostility.
To understand why it is forbidden in this context, you have to understand the psychology of cooking. When someone cooks for you, they are not just giving you calories.
They are giving you their time, their labor, and their resources. They are performing an act of care.
If you respond to an act of care with the word hate, you are not just insulting the fish. You are insulting their labor and rejecting their care. It is deeply offensive.
So even if the fish tastes like bitter garbage to you, you must protect the chef's feelings. You have to navigate the situation with diplomacy.
Our guide provides the perfect diplomatic shield. Instead of saying, I hate it, you can say, it's not really my thing.
It's not really my thing is a masterpiece of social engineering. Look at what it accomplishes. It removes the blame entirely from the food.
And places the responsibility on your own personal quirks.
You're saying the food is probably excellent, but my unique personality just doesn't align with it.
It is impossible for the chef to be offended because you have made it about you, not about them.
Another variation is being specific about your identity. If someone offers you a massive slice of rich, heavy chocolate cake, and you do not want it, you can simply say, I'm not much of a dessert person.
Again, this is brilliant. You are categorizing yourself.
Yeah.
The world is divided into dessert people and non-dessert people, and you simply belong to the latter group.
The host feels no rejection. They just accept your categorization.
And what if someone is holding a bowl of food out to you, waiting for an answer right in the moment, and you need to decline quickly and politely?
The phrase is, I'll pass, thank you.
To pass, in this context, comes from card games or sports. It means to choose not to take an action when it is your turn.
Imagine a ball being thrown toward you, and instead of catching it, you just step aside and let it pass by.
Would you like some more potatoes? I'll pass, thank you.
It is brief, it is clear, and the addition of thank you softens the refusal into a polite interaction.
Now, speaking of phrases that come from different parts of life, we have arrived at one of the most fun and confusing parts of the English language. Idioms.
Oh, idioms. They are the true test of cultural fluency.
An idiom is a phrase where the literal meaning of the individual words has absolutely nothing to do with the actual message being communicated.
It's a cultural secret code. You cannot translate an idiom word by word into your native language. It will sound like nonsense.
The English language is packed with idioms that use food vocabulary to describe non-food situations. This shows just how central food is to the English-speaking worldview.
Let's look at the first one from our guide, a piece of cake.
If you ask a native speaker, was the mathematics test difficult? And they reply, no, it was a piece of cake. A beginner might be very confused.
Why are they talking about baked goods during a math exam?
To understand the idiom, you have to look at the psychology behind the food. Eating a soft, sweet piece of cake requires zero effort. It is easy, pleasant, and requires no hard work.
So, over time, the culture adopted the phrase to mean anything that is incredibly easy to accomplish. Fixing that tire was a piece of cake.
The next idiom is quite the opposite, in a pickle.
I have to admit, I always found this one funny. If someone says, I lost my passport at the airport and my flight leaves in an hour, I am in a pickle, they mean they are in a very difficult, problematic situation.
But why a pickle? Why not a carrot or an apple? What is so bad about a pickle?
To understand this, you need to understand the historical process of pickling. Before refrigeration, humans preserved vegetables by submerging them in a jar filled with highly acidic vinegar and salt.
The vegetables are trapped in this harsh, sour liquid for months.
So metaphorically, if you are in a pickle, you are trapped in a sour, uncomfortable situation with no easy way out. You are the cucumber soaking in the stress.
That makes perfect sense. You are trapped in the sour vinegar of life.
The final idiom we have here is very poetic. Apple of my eye.
If a father points to his daughter and says, "She is the apple of my eye," he means she's the person he loves and cherishes above all others.
But the origin of this phrase is fascinating. Hundreds of years ago, before modern anatomy, people referred to the pupil, the dark, delicate center of the human eye that lets in light, as the apple of the eye because of its round shape.
And the pupil is essential for vision. It is incredibly delicate, and humans instinctively protect their eyes from danger.
So to call someone the apple of your eye means they are as precious, essential, and fiercely protected as your own vision. It's a beautiful metaphor.
Learning idioms is like learning the local currency of a new country. Literal vocabulary gets you basic goods. You can ask for directions or buy a train ticket.
But idioms are the cultural currency. When you use an idiom correctly, you buy social trust, humor, and a deep sense of belonging with native speakers.
We have spent a lot of time in the realm of psychology and culture, but let's bring our deep dive into a very practical, high-stakes environment.
Section 5 of our material takes us out of the realm of metaphor and drops us right into a public space where you must speak English to survive. The restaurant.
The restaurant is the ultimate testing ground for an English learner. Think about the dynamics at play. You are in a public space. You have to communicate with a stranger.
There is background noise. You are paying money, so there are expectations. And you are hungry. It is a situation ripe for anxiety.
Our materials walk us through a role play at a fictional restaurant. And the very first interaction highlights a critical difference in how English handles power and politeness.
When the waiter approaches and asks what the customer wants, a beginner might naturally translate their internal thought directly into English and say, "I want the vegetable pasta." Why is that a mistake?
It is a mistake because of the power dynamic it creates. "I want" is a demand. It is the language a young child uses with their parents. "I want a toy." "I want candy."
When an adult uses "I want" with a service worker, it sounds entitled, aggressive, and disrespectful. It treats the waiter like a servant rather than a professional doing a job.
The polite, culturally expected phrase is "I'd like," which is the contraction for "I would like."
"I would like" changes the dynamic entirely. It softens the demand into a statement of preference. It introduces a subtle hypothetical condition.
You are saying, "If it pleases you, my preference would be the vegetable pasta." It signals respect and equality between you and the waiter.
Respect is the absolute key here. As the roleplay continues, the customer needs to make a special request about a salad. They don't say, "Give me the dressing in a separate bowl."
Instead, they phrase it as a question. "Can I have?"
Phrasing a request as a question is the cornerstone of English politeness. "Can I have?" gives the waiter the illusion of choice, even though it is their job to bring it to you.
It is a collaborative approach to ordering, rather than a dictatorial one. And naturally, it is always followed by the word "please."
I think it is vital to emphasize a fundamental truth for our listeners right now. Politeness makes people want to help you, even if your grammar is terrible.
Absolutely. If you are sitting in a restaurant in London or New York, and you completely forget the correct verb tense, and your pronunciation is struggling,
But you maintain eye contact, smile, and say, "Please, I would like," the waiter will be incredibly patient with you. They will appreciate your effort.
however, if your grammar is absolutely flawless, but you snap your fingers and say, "I want the chicken now," they will despise you. Your attitude communicates vastly more information than your vocabulary.
Yet that should relieve a lot of anxiety for beginners. Perfection is not required. Politeness is.
Now let's look at the specific culinary request the customer made. They asked for the salad dressing on the side. Our guide calls this a pro tip.
It is a vital phrase for taking control of your dining experience. In many Western restaurants, if you order a salad, the kitchen will pour a massive amount of heavy dressing over the lettuce before they bring it to you.
The salad arrives wet and soggy.
If you ask for the dressing on the side, the kitchen must bring the dry salad on one plate and the dressing in a separate tiny bowl next to it. You have taken the power back.
You can dip your fork into the dressing and control exactly how much flavor you want. You can ask for almost anything on the side. Can I have the spicy sauce on the side?
Yeah.
It is a powerful tool for customization.
The customer also orders sparkling water with a slice of lemon. Sparkling water simply means water that has been infused with carbon dioxide gas, giving it bubbles and a sharp, refreshing texture on the tongue.
So that covers the public arena of the restaurant. But what if we leave the public space and go into the private laboratory of the home, the kitchen?
When you cook, language shifts from social politeness to physical action. You need a specific set of verbs.
Cooking verbs are highly specific because the way you apply heat or physical force to an ingredient completely changes its chemical structure.
Let's start with the physical preparation. Before you apply heat, you usually take a sharp knife and a wooden board. The action is to cut vegetables into smaller pieces. The verb is chop.
Chop. The word itself sounds like the action. It is short, sharp, and aggressive. Chop, chop, chop. The blade hitting the wood. You chop onions, you chop garlic.
Once the ingredients are in a pot, you need to combine them. You take a long spoon and move it in a continuous circular motion through the liquid. The verb is stir.
Stirring is gentle. It is constant. You stew a thick soup so the bottom doesn't burn against the hot metal of the pot. You stir milk into your dark, bitter coffee.
Now let's talk about the application of heat, the physics of cooking. If you take a pot, fill it with water, and put it on a high flame until the water is bubbling violently at 100 degrees Celsius, and then you drop food into that water, the verb is boil.
Boiling is a wet, aggressive heat. You boil dry pasta to make it soft. You boil potatoes.
But what if you remove the water entirely? What if you take a flat metal pan, pour in a layer of oil, and heat the oil until it is shimmering?
When food hits hot oil, it makes a loud, aggressive, hissing noise. The verb is fry.
Frying creates the texture we discussed earlier, crispy. The hot oil removes the moisture from the surface of the food, creating a hard, crunchy exterior. You fry bacon, you fry chicken.
Now, let's close the door. If you put food inside an enclosed box, the oven, and surround it with dry, hot air for a long period of time, the verb is bake.
Baking is transformational. It is usually associated with dough. You mix wet flour and yeast, put it in the dry heat of the oven, and the chemistry changes entirely. It rises and becomes bread.
You bake cakes. The smell of baking is often the strongest trigger for the comfort food memories we discussed earlier.
And finally, the most ancient form of cooking. You step outside, build an open fire, place a metal rack over the flames, and put food directly above the fire. The verb is grill.
Grilling exposes food to direct, intense heat and smoke. It leaves dark, charred lines on the food. You grill a thick steak. You grill fresh fish.
Chop, stir, boil, fry, bake, grill. If you master these 6 verbs, you have the keys to unlock any recipe in the English language.
And speaking of recipes, our guide offers a phenomenal study method for beginners that I want to champion. It suggests that you find a simple recipe online and watch a cooking video on YouTube presented by a native English speaker.
I cannot emphasize enough how effective this learning strategy is from a neurological perspective. When you read a textbook, you have to read the English word, translate it into your native language in your head, and then imagine the concept. It is a slow 3-step process.
But when you watch a cooking video, you bypass the translation entirely. You hear the chef say the sharp word chop, and at the exact same millisecond, your eyes watch the knife hit the onion.
Your brain wires the auditory sound of chop directly to the visual action. You absorb the language exactly the way a child learns through observation and context. It is incredibly efficient.
Plus, at the end of the video, you have learned how to cook a new meal. You are feeding your mind and your body simultaneously.
And this transition from cooking at home leads us naturally to the broader modern conversation about what we are actually choosing to put into our bodies.
Exactly. Whether you are boiling pasta at home or politely asking for dressing on the side at a restaurant, all of these decisions accumulate into your diet.
And in the modern English-speaking world, there is a constant, loud cultural conversation happening about diets. You will see it on the news, on social media, and hear it in daily conversations. We are talking about the battle between healthy food and junk food.
As an adult navigating English spaces, you must be equipped to participate in this conversation. Let's examine the vocabulary used to divide these two camps. First, the positive side. Healthy food.
A fantastic, elevated word the text provides for healthy food is nutritious. If a food is nutritious, it is packed with the specific elements, vitamins, minerals, proteins that the human body requires to repair cells and generate sustained energy.
Think about the biological outcome. When you eat a deeply nutritious meal, perhaps a fresh green salad with grilled fish and brown whole grains, your body doesn't just feel full, it feels capable.
Your mind is sharp. You have the sustained stamina to work or exercise. Nutritious foods are usually those that remain very close to their natural state in the earth or the ocean.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have a category with a very harsh name. Junk food. Let's analyze that word. Junk literally means trash. It means discarded items that have zero value.
To call something junk food is a severe cultural judgment.
It is a harsh label, but scientifically accurate in terms of nutrition. Junk food refers to items that have been heavily processed by factories. They are loaded with unnatural amounts of refined sugars, artificial fats, and salt.
We're talking about candy bars, bright sugary sodas, and heavily deep-fried snacks. The cruel trick of junk food is that because of the massive amounts of sugar and salt, it tastes incredibly good in the moment. It hits the pleasure centers of the brain.
But an hour later, you experience a crash. Your energy disappears and you feel lethargic and tired because there was no actual nutrition to sustain you.
However, the English materials we are studying introduce a very mature, forgiving philosophy regarding this battle. It does not promote a rigid, punishing lifestyle where you must never touch sugar again.
Instead, it focuses on the concept of balance.
Balance. The idea that life is not black and white. And within this philosophy of balance, the English language offers a wonderful guilt-free word. A treat.
A treat is a brilliant psychological tool. By definition, a treat is an item that is out of the ordinary, consumed purely for pleasure, and enjoyed in moderation. It is not fuel for your daily life. It is a deliberate reward.
If you work incredibly hard all week, deal with a stressful commute, and eat nothing but nutritious salads and grilled chicken from Monday to Thursday, then on Friday night, you sit on the couch and eat a massive warm chocolate chip cookie.
That cookie is not junk food in that context. It is a treat. It is a reward that you have earned.
This specific vocabulary, calling it a treat instead of cheating on your diet, changes your mental relationship with food. It removes the shame.
It allows you to participate in the joy of eating without feeling like you have failed. Understanding the nuance between daily nutrition and an occasional treat allows you to discuss modern diets with a native level of sophistication.
We have journeyed through a massive landscape of language today. We started with the foundational architecture of the word because. We explored the evolutionary biology of sweet and bitter tastes and the bone-rattling sound of crunchy textures.
We unpacked how the smell of melting cheese unlocks childhood memories in the brain. We navigated the complex sociology of saying, "I'll pass," instead of "I hate it."
We decoded bizarre idioms about cakes and pickles, survived ordering in a restaurant, and finally balanced our diets with a well-earned treat.
It has been a comprehensive intellectual journey, disguised as a vocabulary lesson. But to truly solidify this knowledge, we need to test how well these descriptive adjectives have painted pictures in our minds. Let's engage in a quick linguistic exercise.
Let's do it. Our guide includes a Guess the Food game. This isn't really a test of whether you know what an apple is. It is a test of how powerfully the English adjectives can trigger your imagination.
I will describe 3 foods using only the sensory and contextual vocabulary we have explored today. You, the listener, and the host will try to form the image in your mind. Here is food number 1. This food is fundamentally cold. The primary taste is deeply sweet. It comes in a variety of flavors, often vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry. Contextually, you frequently consume it while walking outside on a very hot summer day, holding it in a crunchy cone. What is the image?
Cold, sweet, vanilla, summer, crunchy cone. The adjectives instantly build the picture. Listener, I'm sure you have it. It is ice cream.
Correct. The contrast of the cold food on a hot day is the defining characteristic. Let's move to food number 2. The visual exterior is bright yellow. The shape is distinctly long and curved. When you interact with it, you must peel away the outer skin. Inside, the texture is incredibly soft and yielding to the teeth. Culturally, it is often associated with the diet of monkeys. What is it?
Yellow, curved, peel, soft texture. Again, the physical description leaves no doubt it is a banana.
Precisely. Now for the final, most complex description. Food number 3. The geometric shape is round and flat. The foundational taste is savory, meaning it is rich and salty, not sweet at all. The bottom architecture relies on a baked crust. It is heavily topped with an acidic red tomato sauce and a thick layer of melted, stretching cheese. Culturally, it is one of the most common foods ordered for delivery directly to a home for sharing. What is the image?
Round, savory, baked crust, melted cheese delivery. We started our entire deep dive by analyzing this exact item. It is pizza.
Excellent. Notice how you didn't need a photograph. The specific English adjectives were enough to render a high-definition image in your brain. That is the power of precision in language.
As we prepare to leave the table today, I want to highlight a beautiful, overarching metaphor from our materials that perfectly captures the experience of an adult learning English. The guide states, learning a language is like cooking a big, complex meal. It takes time, patience, and a little bit of heat.
It is a profound comparison. Think about a rich, traditional stew. You cannot rush it. You cannot throw hard vegetables and raw meat into a pot, turn the fire on high for 2 minutes, and expect a masterpiece. It requires time.
The individual ingredients have to sit together. They have to slowly break down and mix until they create a unified flavor.
Language acquisition is exactly the same. You cannot memorize a dictionary on Monday and be fluent on Tuesday. You have to be patient with yourself.
You have to let the vocabulary sit in your mind, mixing with your experiences until the words feel natural. And it requires a little bit of heat. The heat is the friction of practice. The heat is the slight anxiety you feel when you open your mouth to speak English to a stranger. Without that heat, the language will never cook.
To help you apply that heat, we have a challenge for you, a piece of homework. Tonight, when you sit down for your evening meal, do not just eat in silence. Look at the plate in front of you and describe it in your mind using the English tools you learned today.
Tell yourself, this chicken is salty and crispy. Build the sentence structure. I like this meal because. Force your brain to actively process the physical world in English.
And for your second piece of homework, use your new language to create a human connection. Find a friend, a colleague, or a language partner and ask them the magical question, what is your comfort food?
Then listen. Listen for the memories of their childhood. Listen for the smell of the rainy days or the maternal care in their stories. You will learn something profound about who they are.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, and we hope you feel equipped not just with words, but with the cultural context to use them powerfully. But before we finish, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to ponder. Something to chew on, as the English idiom says.
Today, we explored how the English language uses food as a metaphor for life. We learned that an easy task is a piece of cake, and a stressful situation is being in a pickle. The way English speakers talk about life is directly tied to the historical realities of their kitchens and their preservation methods.
So we turn the lens back onto you. Think deeply about your own native language. Think about the historical, traditional foods of your own culture. If English speakers see the world through the lens of baked goods and sour vinegar jars, what food idioms exist in your native tongue?
Does your culture value slow, complex cooking, and do you have idioms that reflect patience? Do you come from a culture that relies heavily on spicy, fiery ingredients, and do you use those words to describe passionate love or sudden anger?
Language is not invented in a vacuum. It is born from the soil, harvested by the hands, and cooked in the kitchen. The ingredients your ancestors ate have secretly shaped the way you build your understanding of the world around you.
It is a fascinating mirror to hold up to yourself. Your culture, your kitchen, and your language are all simmering together in one magnificent pot. We hope this deep dive has given you the confidence to start serving your own brilliant ideas in English. Embrace the process, endure a little bit of heat, and remember that every single new word you learn is just another ingredient for a great, mature conversation. Thank you for pulling up a chair and joining us at the table.